Hello and welcome to the True North Show, Season 5 of the True North Show, actually. I'm your host, Megan North, and I'd like to start by thanking the sponsors of the show, Quantum Awakening, Beth Lewis, Anne C. Clark, and my lovely guest who paid to be featured. Now, before I introduce my lovely guest, who is sitting here patiently with me, I'd like to say a very, very big thank you to my guests and everyone who has supported me on this show over the last year. The last 4 seasons of the True North Show has had over 150 viewers tune in, and I am just so grateful to all of you. So to kick off Season 5, I'm so excited to introduce an incredible and wonderful woman who I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with for about 4 years now. Courtney McCloud has built a career that doesn't fit neatly into a single box, and that's part of what makes her story worth telling. After starting out as a high school English teacher, Courtney went on to spend over a decade working across communications and engagement in some of Australia's most recognisable organisations, from secondary and tertiary education institutions to a national construction company, which is where we actually met. Her career has also taken her into international development and the not-for-profit sector, shaped not by the status quo, but by the genuine curiosity about people and what moves them. At the heart of Courtney's work is a simple but powerful belief that communications is transformative. Whether supporting business leaders through difficult change, building community in workplaces, or producing work that makes frontline workers feel seen, she has spent her career turning that belief into measurable outcomes. That journey eventually led her to one of the most clarifying decisions of her life, founding the Hummingbird effect. Today, Courtney is focused on maximising the power of communications strategy for organisations, making a tangible impact, while also developing a vision for mentoring the next generation of professionals. She is warm, direct, and refreshingly honest about the messy reality of building a meaningful career and brings both hard-won expertise and genuine heart to not just this conversation, but everything that she does. So, Courtney, welcome to the True North Show. I am so looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on your 4 seasons so far.
Thank you very much. Thank you. How does it feel when I read out your bio when you're just sitting there as a listener? Is it strange to hear it when someone else is saying it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But it's a good reflection as well, I think.
It is. Yeah. And these things don't happen overnight. So to sort of hear your story condensed like that, I think is part of what is odd about it, because you know it in so much detail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Courtney has seen firsthand how the right communication strategy can transform an organisation and the people within it. And right after this short commercial break, we'll get into that, exactly how she makes that happen. Welcome back. I'm here with Courtney McCloud, and we're diving into what it really takes to build communications that drive genuine, measurable change, both in business and personally. So, Courtney, let's start from the beginning and ask the big question that I always ask everybody. So what was the defining moment that led you to pursue your true passion and purpose? And I'd really love to know as well, in particular, why communications?
Yeah. So I haven't had one defining moment. It has been a journey ever since I finished school more than 20 years ago now. And so if I get lost as I'm sort of explaining this, please feel free to jump in and redirect me. So I think when I was finishing school and you're figuring out what you want to do and you're getting all of the questions, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I couldn't quite express it. I knew I wanted to do lots of different things, but I also didn't feel like I could say that out loud. That didn't feel like it was going to be an acceptable answer. Mm-hmm. It didn't fit the general expectation, and it certainly isn't kind of that targeted arrow and really clear direction, right? Mm-hmm. So I kept that to myself, and I thought, okay, well, at least what's the next step? But once I took away that idea of, well, but I want to do lots of different things, that made it really, really hard for me to figure out what the first step would be. Mm. So through a variety of conversations and lots of reflection and various things, I eventually settled on high school English teaching. And so I settled on that and went off and did a degree. And as I did my degree, I worked for a variety of different not-for-profits in international development and social services and so on. And that, through that process, I started to see the role of communications in achieving organizational goals and projects and campaigns and that kind of thing. Because when you are working towards something with a team, at some point, you need to work with other people or bring other people in to help make it happen. Or if you have an audience, how you reach that audience is through communications. And I started to see that, oh, hang on, actually, there's a way of doing this well. Mm-hmm. And these weren't usually staff positions. So it was something that we all just kind of would take on as part of our roles organically.
Right.
So it was something I did a lot of through that time as well. Mm-hmm. I finished my Bachelor of Arts with the Diploma of Education and went and got a job as a teacher. Mm-hmm. And through that time, towards the end of that time, I just started had this little feeling of there's something else. Something else is next. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to leave teaching because I loved it. And one of the things I did was work for a not-for-profit teaching global citizenship and global leadership at high schools all over Sydney. And it was incredible. Wow. So rewarding. And I honestly think they will be some of my most rewarding career days. Yeah, such a special time. And yeah, I started to, even in spite of how fulfilled I was in that work, that feeling of there's something else just kept coming back. So I spent that time reflecting again and keeping my eyes peeled for what could be next and thinking about options, having conversations with people, and eventually settled on communications. And a big part of that was because of the role I'd seen it play in my roles throughout my 20s.
Yeah.
And I started a master's in communications at the University of Technology, Sydney. And then roles started coming up in communications. And so I moved on from teaching much faster than I had intended to, but just because that was where the opportunities were. And fast forward to some more work in not-for-profits, another role in education, and then into corporate communications, and then hop, skip, and a jump to today. And I've started a communications consulting business, and that's somewhat of an overview.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really interesting because when you talk about going into teaching and being a teacher, particularly high school teacher, English high school teacher, there's a lot of language, there's a lot of communication involved in that. So it's almost like even though you couldn't really – so when you said that you couldn't really do what you wanted to do at the beginning, is this now what you really wanted to do? Like, have you gone full circle?
Yeah, right. I think so. I think if somebody had said to me, oh, you're thinking about entrepreneurship, I don't know that I could have connected with that idea at 17. I don't know that my sense of self or what I understood about who I was would have really connected to that idea. And so the journey has shown me that. And yeah, as cliched as it might be, it really has been about that journey for me. It's taken some 22 years or whatever. And, but here we are, and now I can see how suited to entrepreneurship I was. But, all those years ago, I don't think I would have been able to see it.
Yeah. And you probably also wouldn't have been able to see, in a sense, in an organisation, what's good comms and what's not, because you hadn't worked in organisations. I mean, you and I have done some work in some organisations together, and, we do know what good comms looks like and what bad comms looks like. I've got a background in HR, so I know the impact of that as well. So, on your journey then you've picked up those sort of things that now, being the entrepreneur and having your own business and doing this work and being selective about the clients that you're working with, you can really put in that, well, I've seen what works really well and I've seen what doesn't work really well.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's illuminated to you through your time in the workforce can be so incredibly different to what you actually imagined. And where you imagine you might fit compared to the reality of that, it teaches you so much about life, about yourself, about the work that you want to spend your time doing. So yeah, it's worthwhile to take a path that you might not imagine for yourself, but that ultimately is really helpful.
Yeah. It's about trusting the process, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mentioned when I was reading out your bio that you're the founder and director of the Hummingbird Effect. So what's the meaning behind the name?
I took my time figuring out what to call this business because it really mattered to me to have something that was quite deep and had a lot of imagery. And so I spent months and months and months just sitting and waiting for inspiration and then reflecting. And that is how my creative process works for things that are really important to me. And the Hummingbird Effect is all about the transformative impact of communications. And the hummingbird is this tiny little bird, which isn't native to Australia. And I did think about a native Australian bird, but ultimately it didn't quite fit. And so I went back to this bird native to the Americas that's so well known globally. And so while we don't have them here in Australia, I did actually see one in Canada when I was 9 years old. My family was there. And they're just incredible. And they're so small. They're just so tiny. But over 8,000 flora and fauna are reliant on them for their as a part of the ecosystem. So they're completely critical to the life of ecosystems in the Americas. Yeah, it's incredible. And so, yeah.
8,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they are, as a part of the whole, they are critical to maintaining ecosystems. Remove the hummingbird and you don't have habitats and food sources, because what they do is that when they feed and their very, very long beak goes deep into the stem of the flower, they drink the nectar, but the pollen ends up all over their bodies and their beak. And so then they fly to another flower, they do the same thing and they transfer the pollen. And it's the pollen that the flowers need from other flowers to then create seeds.
Right.
And so just through playing its role, the hummingbird is helping sustain ecosystems. And so this imagery of how the hummingbird, even though it is so, so tiny, has this incredibly profound impact was something that I wanted to bring into my business. Because, and we can talk about this more as we go, but the way communications is seen in organizations can be interesting, and perhaps the importance of its role is not quite understood in some spaces. And the hummingbird, while well known, perhaps its impact isn't understood at a really deep level as well, but they are incredibly consequential and have a huge impact on ecosystems. And so that imagery of how the presence of the hummingbird can transform ecosystems, I wanted to bring over to my business, because communications can also transform and have a huge impact and be incredibly powerful. And I love nature. It's where I would spend all of my time. And so I wanted to bring in the natural world to my business, because I do think that we're inherently linked, and our relationship with nature is a huge part of what makes us human, and how we exist in the world, where we can't be separated from it, right? So I wanted that relationship to be a part of what I was doing.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I'm just blown away with like the 8,000, like it's just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, unimaginable. Yeah.
Wow, it's just incredible. And so you've talked about your love of nature. So from a mental health and well-being point of view, does nature play a big part in that for you?
Yeah, it does. It's so one of sort of 4 things that I think are critical to how I maintain my overall well-being. And because if we're honest, there's no pursuing your dreams or anything else, right? If we don't have our health.
Yep.
And so, and I say health specifically because we know that our bodies and our minds are inextricably linked, and science continues to show all of the ways that that's the case, in ways that just really blow the mind. Yeah. So for me, those 4 things that are about body and mind are exercise, being in nature, time with loved ones, and then nutrition. And so nature, and it's a sense of being immersed in nature, right? I've got away from the hustle and bustle, and I've been with the plants, or I've been with the ocean, and I've existed in that space, and I've been absorbed in that space for a while, and you come away feeling refreshed. Yeah. And then nutrition, well, actually, I'll come back to that. Exercise, I think we're made to move, right? And our bodies are so incredibly strong and powerful. And while I was really active all of my life growing up, it really wasn't until kind of I was in my mid-20s and I started lifting weights at the gym that I discovered actually how strong I could be. And that was really empowering for me, because I just did not know how powerful my body was. And so that was a really significant moment. And from there, I've just kind of taken and run with that, and maintained my gym junkie lifestyle over the years. And so while a walk outside is really important to me, at the same time, that strength and fitness that I get from going to a spin class or a boxing class or lifting weights gives me something else. But I also know I'm incredibly lucky, because I get such a rush of amazing chemicals from exercise, and not everybody does get those feel good hormones, but for me, I feel them pretty quickly once I start exercising. And I know I'm incredibly lucky for that, because that is our mental health is reliant on those feel good hormones. And so then time with loved ones. So this is, for me, is really about maintaining that connection with the people that you do life with, that sort of, you don't have to be in touch every day, but you know what's going on. And it's the people who fill your cup. And so if there's a midweek crisis, sometimes you might hear about it at the time, but even if you hear about it the next time you catch up over lunch or whatever, you're around for what's going on, and you're sharing your lives together. And then nutrition. So I said I'd come back to this one, and I specifically wanted to mention, because it's not something that I've always known about, but we are what we eat, right? And so I would have been different types of foods over my life. For example, at 19, I was definitely Nutella. And people have so many witnesses that will attest to that, right? So, but now I'm happy to say it's much more balanced, but because in being what we eat, one of the things that impacts is our gut health and our microbiome. And what science has discovered over the past 10 years is just how much influence our microbiome has over our overall health. And our diet directly influences that. And so it's all of the things that we hear most of our lives growing up in Australia about eating a balanced diet, right? And getting your different nutritional needs met via your a colourful diet that's full of fruits and vegetables, nuts and grains and different sources of proteins, but also limiting those other things like sugar and alcohol that are really inflammatory. And learning about the microbiome has really opened my eyes up to just how those everyday choices can impact your mood and your overall well-being. And so for me, health is that holistic picture. It's not about one thing. It's about all of those daily practices that are built in as a part of my routine and my schedule that I maintain overall. And I can see the impact because I feel so lucky. As much as it's earned, I actually have a very high mood, and I feel so incredibly lucky because I know it's not to be taken for granted, and that these things can change, and that we're not in control of all of the forces that can influence how these things change in our lives. And so by maintaining a good foundation of what I am in control of, all of those other things hopefully move through life. And as you go through your ups and downs, hopefully that foundation can maintain me and moving forward.
Wow. I love that. That's that holistic approach.
Yeah.
You know, you don't, and it is interesting, isn't it, that a lot of people talk, you know, mind, body, spirit, and it's like, no, it's everything. They're not three different parts. They're all
Absolutely
of us. So I love that you take that mental health and well-being really just as the overall health of you, and that includes all of that. It's really
and when you start to see it that way, you start to notice all of the different ways that those things do interact. Because when I have been consistent with my exercise, for example, my concentration is so much better, which means that my stress is lower, right? It's little things like that. And if, for example, I've had a lush, beautiful dinner one night with a couple of glasses of wine and a beautiful dessert, then the next day, perhaps I'm a little bit foggy-headed just because my body is dealing with whatever it needs to flush out as a result of that. So you learn about your body as you live these things out.
And then when you're exercising and your mind is sharp, then you're actually craving healthy food as opposed to bad food, because you don't need a sugar rush to help you with the afternoon slump, because you're not getting the afternoon slump because, you know, everything is working well. So
exactly. Absolutely. So true.
Love that. And so from a like when you were talking about, you know, like your energy is quite high all the time, what about times where you've got to sort of ground yourself and kind of come back to being really present and just feeling grounded? Is there anything that you do? Is nature again the big part of your grounding?
It can be. So I think another part of this for me is time to myself. That means that in the busyness and the noisiness of life, that time just to myself where I'm alone with my thoughts means I'm reconnecting with myself, right? And I know what's going on in my head. And you more can filter it and sort it out as you go through. As opposed to it accumulating. Sometimes if I get stuck or I'm really feeling overwhelmed or I have too many thoughts, I might walk out to my vegetable garden and just talk to my plants and sort of see how they're coming along, or pick a couple of caterpillars off. And it's a slight distraction, but it's also a break for my brain. It's that connection with nature, and it's just something really beautiful. And the sense of joy that I get from watching things grow, I can't describe it, but I do. And And so, helping my sweet pea up the trellis and whatever else it might be, wishing the aphids would get off the broccoli, that little moment that I take to do that, then come back inside and get back to work, just clears the head and gives your brain a moment to filter what it needs to. I appreciate how privileged I am to be able to do that in working from home, right? When it's not something like that, journaling is a really grounding practice for me. It's because then you're not trying to hold everything in your head, you're getting it onto paper. And so very quickly it just becomes clearer. Whether it's that you need an answer or you just needed to sort through your thoughts and organize them, it kind of suddenly, it's almost as though it appears on the paper just because you got it out of your head.
Out of your head,
And sometimes that's all I need. And then I go, oh, wow, it was, half a paragraph of this little book and I'm sweet now, and then go back to, whatever it else is that you need to get on with. But so when I do need that extra grounding, sometimes it's nature and sometimes it's that active practice of journaling and meditation as well. And sometimes it's all of them. You need the whole toolkit.
I think sometimes when you write things down and you finally get out of your head and then you read it and you think, oh my gosh, really? Have I just spent a day worrying about this?
Lesson learned.
Exactly. And so I love that you were talking about before, like watching your sweet pea grow, and you love being part of that. Is that then where, when you're working with your clients and watching them build these communication strategies, is that something that then is tied to that, in the sense of watching that strategy grow and really seeing the impact of what it's having on the organization?
Absolutely. It's definitely a big part of what I love about communications is how strategic it is. I think for me, I started my career sort of in education in the not-for-profit sector, and I just wanted to be a part of, as cliched as it sounds, making the world a better place. I know it's cliched. I'm going to have to lean into it. And in making that sort of transition into different fields, so whether education in the corporate space, as I thought about, well, what does that look like for me? How do I make that work for me? It was really about, well, where does the rubber hit the road in people's lives? Where are we seeing that day-to-day impact of what makes the gears turn in society at a high level, but then also just the day-to-day realities that we all live with? And so for me, that was where I found the meaning outside of the not-for-profit sector, was what makes life work on a day-to-day level for people. And so hence construction and energy, and then still education as well, just in a communications role instead. And that strategy piece, starting out at the beginning and looking at where you are and where you want to go, and then developing a strategy and plan to get there, and then watching it come to fruition. It's so exciting to watch that transformation and to be a part of it, but also to know that you're contributing to that bigger whole, whatever it is. And that's incredibly meaningful, which was also how I felt about doing internal communications, was that you're contributing to the employee experience of a workplace, which can make a huge difference to how a person feels about going to work every day. It impacts culture. It impacts a business's ability to achieve their outcomes and goals and objectives. And so even if you aren't directly involved on a day-to-day level with an employee's well-being in the workplace or their sense of achievement based on what they're doing, you're still contributing to the whole. And the thing is that when that strategy is right and the comms are clear and it makes sense to everyone, then an employee is then going to work loving the place that they're working because the culture is rich. But also then when someone says, who do you work for, the way that they describe the organisation and the work they do and how they turn up in the community or in business can be really clear as well. Yes, absolutely. And we talk about in communications, brand is a big part of what we do in communications. And often you become responsible for maintaining and managing an organization's brand, which is, and there's different figures around this, but one number that I've read is that it's estimated business's brand is about 20% of their enterprise value, which is huge.
Massive.
And so the investment in brand, and by extension communications, goes a long way to overall enterprise value. But then your success at achieving your goals and objectives, whether it's selling your products or any other type of service that you're providing to society and the community. And communications has a direct relationship with brand. And so the role that the work that you do to make a brand more consistent, or perhaps give it an update, or tweak the narrative that you're telling about a business, who it is and what it's aiming to do, why it exists, and then the internal narrative that you're also telling your people about who you are and what you do, the difference that you're making, how you're contributing to society and to people's lives, and the sense of meaning that they get from that, knowing that they're contributing to it, regardless of their role, has an enormous cumulative effect. And as you were talking about, your employees become brand ambassadors.
Yeah.
And then the uptick around brand value as a part of enterprise value continues to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting from a business perspective. I remember when I first started business 5 years ago, what I thought people wanted from my coaching business was completely off to what actually people wanted.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm offering is amazing. But actually the way that I was communicating it and how I was saying it was not how then people were it wasn't resonating.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. And that was a quite a pivotal moment for me in the sense of going, okay, right, I need to take this feedback on because if not, I'm never going to have a client because no one's going to resonate. But I think that it's important that, I think it's interesting in various organizations I've worked in, and I'm sure you've seen the same, that when big corporates think they know what their customers want and what they want to hear to actually what it is can sometimes be completely off.
Yeah, and you've picked up on a couple of really key things there, which I think, as you well know, what you do as an entrepreneur when you first start out can morph and change with you, right? As you learn about yourself and your clients and customers, but then also what you want to be doing and what actually fits.
Yeah.
Right. But then from a communications perspective, it's often seen as being one directional. And that is whether it's a leader talking to their people within an organization, the leader talks and communications is one directional, right? Or an organization talking to their customer base outside the organization, it's one directional. But actually, good communications is two directional. And in communications, it's called, and I will do this at a super high level for obvious reasons. It's called, I'm going to forget what it's called. But basically the whole point is to have two-way symmetrical communications where the leader or the organization is talking and the audience is listening and understanding. But then the audience is also talking back and the leader and the organization are listening. Right. And so it's not a one-directional activity. Yeah. So to think of communications as just a way of giving instructions and that's it, you're actually in many ways missing the point. Yeah. And in many ways, there also emerges an ethical issue, and there can emerge ethical issues, but there's a significant conversation in academia around the loss of trust in institutions and where that's coming from. And some of the conversation is around the fact that organizations and governments aren't listening. And if they are doing any listening, then they're not responding. or they're not taking it on board, right? And the research shows that people actually don't expect you to agree with them, whether it's in an organizational setting or whether you're a customer. People just want to know they've been heard. That generally speaking, people are really realistic about the fact that they're not going to get everything they want, but to be heard is incredibly significant. And so there's a difference between hearing someone and just dismissing them offhand because you're never going to do it. But to go, you know what, I hear you and I actually understand, and here's why we're not able to do it, but I do really get that is an issue, and for all of these reasons that you've explained and so on, right? Yeah. So that's one of the other things that you've picked up on there, is that communications shouldn't be one direction. Yeah. It should be happening in two directions, with both parties trying to understand, and for that, what is heard to then be reflected back in the following in the communications that follows.
Interesting. And I'm sure that people listening, and I'm sure that you've had this experience before, is that, you know, you've gone to a meeting or you've caught up with someone, and sometimes I just feel like they're just talking at me. And they're not taking a breath, and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And you think, oh my gosh, like, just pause, because I need a break, because you're just talking at me.
Yes.
And then you end up just switching off.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a great example of what communications can look like, right? It's almost like being spammed by email, but in person. Yes. And it doesn't work. And once you've lost your audience, it is that much harder to get them back. So thinking about how you're going to do communications well to not just get your audience's attention, but show that you're relevant, that you are worthy of their time and attention. And then that you're not going to be that person, whether by email or in person, is much more worthwhile than getting the audience and then losing them and then having to come back and go, okay, well, let's try again, because you've tarnished your relationship with potentially a large part of your audience to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, we know that whole know, like, and trust is the journey, right? And so that can sometimes be very short, but then sometimes it can be a long journey. And so if you're then being spoken at and not heard, then, you know, that relationship can end very quickly.
Absolutely.
And then that know, like, and trust journey could maybe never happen again, or it's even a longer period of time.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. And so when we talk about the work that you've done and the places that you've worked, you've spoken about the role that women mentors have played in your own career, and I've had some amazing ones myself. But there's a broader conversation here, because for ambitious women, like you and I were in corporate, success doesn't always land the way you might expect it to. So what does that really look like in practice? And so why do you think that supporting other women behind the scenes matters so much?
Yeah, I never imagined the support that I would receive from other women throughout my career. In leaving school and then in my 20s, I was just supported throughout by so many different women from all different walks of life, some that I knew personally, but also some that I just met through different jobs. And so I think of a specific role where I was working for a not-for-profit, but we had corporate volunteers as a part of our work. And they would come along to these sessions in schools and work with the students around their campaigns. And this was the Global Leadership Program. And so then you'd spend a little bit of time with them, perhaps each month, and slowly get to know each other. It wasn't a lot of time that you had to chat, right? But they would often be curious about my own career path. And so very quickly it became, well, let's grab a coffee. One day we're both in the office and let's have a chat about what you're doing and where you want to go and everything. And it blew me away, because I was no one to them. No one. I was just this 20-something running this program, and they were volunteering, but they offered their time so freely. And they would say, well, because people did for me, I know how important it is. Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. And I'm still blown away by it, and I still think about them, and I would not be where I am if it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
Those women that I met just by happenstance through work, and the ones from when I was younger, and there was even one when I was a teenager, and I didn't grow up in the same state as my cousins, and so I didn't have those older people around just for sort of that you sort of learnt about life from a younger person. Yeah. But she came into my life through the local community and invested in me so much. And so even from a really young age, I can see all of these women who've just journeyed with me and how generous they've been. And along the journey, as I've been figuring out what I'm doing, they've helped provide those prompts, those ideas of when I wasn't sure, or could this work, or is this a direction, or what's another idea, or how do I actually go about this? They were the people who provided the answers because I didn't have them. So, as I said, I would not be where I am if it wasn't for them. And it does imprint on you so powerfully because it is so freely given and generous and just so beautiful. Just so truly beautiful. And because, like I said, I was nobody to some of these women, but they were willing to invest in me. And some of them in really senior positions, they had no time, you know? But what about you? I imagine you've experienced some of that as well.
Definitely. And, you know, the biggest thing for me is that what I've found in the last 5 years of being in my own business is that then the women that step in and support you who are also business owners as well, because women, and you know what, I think it's just that general community, like women love community.
Yeah.
And you know, traditionally over hundreds of thousands of years, community and the women's business and the women getting together and helping and talking and supporting. And that's been one of the most beautiful things for me in being like stepping out of corporate and then coming into my own business, is that there's just the generosity of people has just been beautiful. But then when I sit and think about it, I think, well, that's just also then how I help others as well. You know, someone rings me and says, can I just get 5 minutes of your time? I want to run something by you. Of course, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost that pay it forward then, isn't it? Of that,
absolutely.
You know, just supporting and just being an ear for someone when they need it. Yeah.
And when you've experienced that and you've seen the impact it has on your own life, the way that it compels you, the energy it gives you to do it for others is just huge.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Really special. Yeah. And so when we were talking last week, you mentioned to me that you had an interesting conversation with the CFO recently. So, and you haven't shared it with me because you wanted to share it on here. So can you share the context and why it was interesting? What was it all about?
So one of these conversations that you just have as a new business owner, and you connect with different people. And so we were having a general chat about running a business, and it was a very honest conversation. They're the sorts of conversations I prefer to have anyway, right? Just to come at things as they are. And I was honest with him about the fact that the value of communications wasn't necessarily already inherently seen. And so I appreciated that, you know, he may have had that experience as a CFO in businesses in his career, right? And so that could be a challenge for communications professionals, including if you're running your own business, right? And so we'd sort of been having this conversation as a part of our overall. And then at one point, he said to me, well, so if I put this question to you, then why should I pay for someone like you to do some work for me when I could just get AI to write an email to my employees? And I so appreciate that honesty.
Yeah.
Right. Let's actually have that conversation.
Yeah.
Especially
like the elephant in the room.
Exactly. Especially with AI and how it's changing the workforce. And when communications does tend to be something that people see as, well, we all do it every day, so therefore we all can do it. And so we had the conversation, and it is a very big, broad conversation. And But part of it is, well, what is it you're actually trying to achieve through that email? Because it's for the most part, it's about far more than just one email. And so how are you thinking about your communications at an organizational level as the CFO or as the CEO, and the overall approach that you are taking in your relationship with your people? How are you fostering and nurturing that and driving your culture? How are you using your communication systems and the different channels to do that? How are you listening, as we've already talked about? And how are you taking on board what you are hearing from people and then feeding it back to them, and not at one town hall a year, consistently throughout the year, right? So you can get AI to write an email. Personally, if somebody wants me to read an email, I would rather they didn't use AI. If somebody wants, even as an employee, and I appreciate there might be a lot of people who just go, well, if you're an employee and your employer sends you an email, you need to read that, whether it's written by AI or not. And I get that. And I'm happy to, do my part as an employee and fulfill my responsibilities. But I think there is an honor that we show people if we want them to read something that we have sent them, even if they are an employee, that we have taken the time to write that ourselves and to put thought and care into it. And I'm not suggesting an unreasonable amount of time. Right? And I think I'm not saying don't use AI at all for that sort of thing. If you're stuck on a sentence, you can say, how could I say this? Or how can I condense this, right? But if you are trying to connect with people, the way to do that is not through AI. And so as part of that big, broad conversation, that was a part of what I said to him. And I could see that it was thought provoking, but it was a really valuable conversation to have, because it is in the not understanding what communications is about and does that you can't bring it to drive outputs and bring value to organizations. Just like we were talking about, it's estimated to be at 20% of enterprise value. If you don't understand what communications does, then you can't harness that, right? And it's even more than brand. It's also employee engagement, as we've talked about, and so many other things. As a profession, communications draws on not just its own academic study, but other fields as well, such as behavioral science, and that's about understanding people. If you don't understand your audience, how on earth are you going to communicate effectively and drive behavior change or influence and so on, right? If you don't, so that's just one area that communications taps into as an industry. But we also learn about statistics, which was great for me because my dad has a doctorate in statistics. So I still ring him up sometimes. Hey, Dad, I got this right? But that's good fun for me. I enjoy being able to do that with him. And so we also look at statistics, and that's because of the evaluation processes that we bring to what we do to make sure it's actually effective. And then the media industry as a part of communications, but is an industry with its own best practice in itself, right? Absolutely huge. But then on a totally different slant, the further you get into your career as a communicator, having skills in graphic design, videography, and so on is also really, really important, right? So all of these things play a role in communications, and the industry taps into that best practice in a variety of different ways. And so at a whole other level, what we do is about so much more than writing an email with AI.
Very interesting. I write like I speak. So sometimes I do want to kind of tweak a couple of things. And I use Claude at the moment. That's the latest AI that I quite like. And I was playing around with something, and Claude asked me a question and I answered it by saying, "Oh, you're really going to love this." And Claude's response was, "I literally got goosebumps right now." I'm like, oh my God, my AI is speaking like me, because energetically I'll often say, oh my God, I just got goosebumps. And that's how it responded. I couldn't stop laughing. That was hilarious.
That's incredibly human.
Oh,
That's
God.
amazing.
And so if what we're talking about really resonates with people, how could someone get in touch with you? Like what's the next step for someone if they'd love to work with you or have a conversation?
Yeah, I'm so open to that. So even if it is just a chat, I've got a link on my website. You can book a discovery call, or you could even just reach out via email on the contact page just to sort of say, hey, and this is what I'm thinking.
Yep, and I've just put the QR code there as well for people to book in for a discovery call as well. So yeah. So we've actually, nearly at the end of time already. Can't believe it.
Yeah.
Goes so quickly, doesn't it? I know. Told you to go quickly.
Yeah.
So given that we've only got a couple of more minutes left, I'm going to ask you the same question that I love to ask all of my guests before we finish the conversation. So, Courtney, what is one lesson or truth that you've learned on your journey that you wish you had known earlier?
This is a great question, and it's a journey I am still on, so it won't take me long to answer for that reason. But that is to not try to be all things to all people.
Love it.
Yeah. And I think it comes from so many places, right? I'm an eldest daughter and also an eldest child, and you just take on so much and you learn to be a certain way from such a young age, right? And I see that in myself. I'm a planner. When I see a problem, I want to tackle it. I want to plan to overcome it so that in a week's time, it is no longer a problem. It's just it's been ironed out, or it's just a part of a routine, but the obstacle is gone, right? And so in the workplace, it can be a great thing, but it can also be it can be problematic because you burn yourself out. If I see a train wreck coming, I want to stop that train, even if it's not in my remit.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just can't.
Yeah.
So getting stressed out, trying to stop a runaway freight train that isn't even your train, not my job, not my remit, and not my monkey, not my circus, is a great saying that I learned the last couple of years.
Yeah. That's really good.
It's not easy, right?
No.
Because you don't want, I don't want, bad things to happen. I want to smooth things over. I want to make things tick as well as they can. I want to be there to support people. I don't want things to be harder for people than they need to be, right? We're all going to face challenges, but we don't have to let them get out of hand. And I want to be a part of helping that, right? So learning to let go of that, and sometimes just let that train run away without you.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice?
True surrender, I'd say. True surrender. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you have today. There has been some, do you know what? I really love doing this with people that I know, because I just learn all these other things.
Yes.
It's just really beautiful just to sit here and just to talk about your journey and learn more about you and all of the amazing things that you're doing. So thank you for spending this time with me today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
You're very welcome. And I'd also like to thank all of my dedicated audience, all of the supporters, and again, the sponsors. And I hope that everybody has an amazing rest of the week, and I'll see you all again next week. And again, thank you, Courtney.
Thanks, Megan.